Templates. Templates are the key. I can't stress it enough. I made this bench as a prototype just to know what I need to do to make it better, such as doing pocket screws rather than having something go straight in. But let me show you. All right, so let me show you what we need. Now, first of all, we have the table saw. It's attached to this outfield table. The bench that you saw, I knew I needed to make something, and I want to make multiples, and that's what these templates are for. Getting your cuts, your angles. On the back small leg, it's a 45-degree angle and a 40-degree angle. Once the template's done, I can cut the piece of wood that I need, glue it to the template, take it to my bandsaw, get rough cuts, take it to my flush bit router, and call it a day. Everything's all done. So, this is the big leg. This can require an 8x8 by 6 quarters is what I'm using. And again, same thing. Once it's nice and flat, plane down, glue the piece on, bandsaw, flush router, and you've got the two hardest things done in absolutely no time whatsoever. The other 4 pieces of wood are literally just cut to size, and you can make your bench as big and small as you care to have it, which is cool. Some people might want it a little bigger, some people might want it a little smaller. Personally, I wouldn't go past around 58, 60 inches for stability reasons, but it depends kind of on the material you're using as well. So I'm no engineer, proof's in the pudding. I chose to use Sassafras for this build. I'm going to mill it down really quickly. Like and subscribe. I had to do something other than guitars just to mix things up, and I'm trying to find a few products like this that can break up a day. With these templates, it's gonna go by super fast. But other than that, let's get to work. So the lumber's milled. We have our 2 small feet. We have our 2 long feet. We have 4 pieces that are 2 for your butt, 2 for your back. Sassafras. So we are just gonna do the old double-sided tape trick, glue these templates on because the cuts are already measured out and they already work. 40 degrees, 45 degrees on the small, 40 degrees, 40 degrees on the big one with a nice little decorative cut. Super glue, duct tape, choppy chop. Let's do it. Alright, so we've got the flush bit. It's going to ride my template, and we're going to cut this thing in no time. Alright, so all 4 pieces are cut from the templates. Pretty easy, pretty fast. I did not get to time this because I had gotten a phone call in between, and I sadly lost track of where I was at. Maybe next time. Alright, so next step is going to be putting a little round on that sassafras, giving it a little bit of a nice, not so edgy look, shall we? Indeed we shall. also did, I think, is an 1/8 inch round over that's going to be in between the two boards when the seat is here. Just a little 1/8 inch on each side where the seam is going to be, but the bigger round overs are on the edge. And you can get just as creative as you want to with this. This is where the artistic portion gets to come out. But now it's time to sand. During the sanding process, this is another great opportunity to talk about sticky sanding paper. When you use the disc and you're sanding, you can tend to get a lot of fatigue in your hand. What I do is I've been using adhesive back sanding paper without any type of holes, and basically you can put it on your fingertips and now you can really feel the contour. There isn't that fatigue that you get with, for some reason, kind of holding on to the paper. This sticks to your fingers, so you can literally just feel it where it needs to go, and you're not cramping your hand. I love it for the contours. With this paper, you can kind of feel the curve that you're working on. Whereas with these, it seems like you're just trying to, crunch it into position or something like that. Anyway, back to sanding. All right, so sanding is practically finished. Now it's time to assemble the legs, and I got myself some, I believe, 2-inch outdoor screws. And what I do is that I will pre-drill for those with a nice little small bit, and then I also bore that hole out so that the screw head sinks into the body, countersink if you will. I've calculated and made this leg board, and basically what it boils down to is flat, the bottom tip of that leg flat, with the top tip of this flat on this board is literally where these legs need to go. So once you've found that, now we're ready to pre-drill and screw these into place, because they're going to be right on the money. Just because I did the sanding mostly off camera, I sanded the whole thing with 220 and then finished it off with a 320. Just a little bit here's and there's, not as aggressive as the 220 to get things nice and smooth. Just a quick note too, I do have an extra piece of wood that was kind of holding this up so that way it was level. These screws are on the inside underneath, so they're not on the outside, they're not going to be seen. So basically this is the nice, smooth, with no screw hole side. Alright, so now we're doing a little bit of a balancing act, but you can kind of see how this is starting to come together, though it's not screwed in yet. My intentions are for pocket screws. I'm going to do a couple test pieces just to be sure, but just to give you guys an idea. Alright, nothing is screwed in yet. Just to give you guys an idea, and I had that little 1/8 round over on the inside, and I think it's just going to look really slick. I just have to mark where I'm going to do some pocket holes, do some test runs, make sure that angle is correct coming from underneath into the board. We'll find out. So the pocket screws are in. I also have some glue that will be joining the two pieces together. Can I do this? I have a board over here that's kind of helping me move. And I'm gonna have this end stick out 2 inches. So that's pretty plumb, it looks like. So it's a matter of just getting those screws in there. And this is all for a dry run, and we'll disassemble and then start putting finish on. So basically we want to be able to hide all the screws from the other side so it looks nice and sleek. Alright, now we'll put some pocket hole screws for the back portion of the bench. First test, looks and feels great. On the dry fit, now I'm going to see where I kind of want to sand, or if there's any kind of angle gap I want to close or blend into something. The other thing I did with this dry fit was literally only putting some of the screws in, so that way when we do final assembly, especially with the glue, there'll be at least one virgin screw that goes right in there and gives it the old first grip. So sand, stain, final assembly. Let's do this. So before I get to the finishing portion of this, I did kind of want to go over just my approach to sanding. I wanted to give this a little bit more of that modern look, some rounded edges, and how I accomplished a lot of that, other than using a round over bit, was going back over and doing circular motions to kind of just smooth those surfaces out. And when I'm looking at the piece, you have to look to see if there's kind of some lines, and you want to make that as round as possible. So circular motions like this is getting this into the look that I wanted. And that's everywhere. Down the center of where people are sitting, or here, I think it's an 1/8 round over, like we use in tele guitars. And the same technique. You just kind of smooth your edges and kind of roll your paper for getting these roundovers smooth and look the way this is. So the next step here is to disassemble and prepare for stain. All right, so what I like to do here is take a rag and dampen it now that the sand isn't complete, and just kind of lightly wipe down the surface just to try to get some of the dust particles out from the wood. We're doing this just before we start applying the finish, so what is that you say? Well, I'm so glad you asked. I'm still going to be gluing where these pieces of wood meet. So what I'm doing is I'm making sure that I don't put finish in that area so that the glue can bond to both pieces of wood. And if there's any kind of touch up, this is from underneath. This is one of the places where you sit on. So it is underneath, and if the finish didn't quite get it perfect. With Danish oil, it's a really cool finish that you can kind of do some touch-up stuff pretty easy. You're going to want to shake this up. I don't know if it gives you a born on date, but Danish oil needs to be shaken up. So right now we've got this pretty much prepped. This type of oil, it's certainly okay if there is some dust on your wood. I just like to wipe it down. And it also kind of, I hope, kind of wick or raises the grain just a little bit so that it can, the finish can be received. Gloves. I don't like stuff on my hands, so I want to be able to pet my doggies. Here's a tip for me. I like going to the dollar store where things aren't really $1 anymore. Getting these foil chicken pot pie things. I believe they can be recycled. Yeah, they're just great for putting finish in. So the next thing is I like to use these brushes. And with this finish, you're going to want to put a pretty generous amount onto the wood. And we're going to try to keep it wet for roughly 15 minutes or so. We want this to really soak in. And again, that tape is preventing the finish to get into that area, so that way the glue can bond. Right before I turn this, reflection to kind of see if there's any kind of dry spots. And once that's good to go, give her a little flipper do. Again, keeping this pretty moist for 15 minutes for the wood to soak in the finish. I also like to make sure I'm taking care of the end grain. It tends to soak the product in way more than anything else. So how do you apply your Danish oil? Anything different? Let me know. I'm always up for trying new things. Now I think we're ready to wipe down. So I've got one of these microfiber towels. And basically we're just gonna kind of wipe off the extra. All right, now for the rest of it. I've placed the tape where I'm gonna have a little bit of glue when I assemble. I don't want the oil finish to be on that. So tape here where the boards are going to be, where you sit. We want to make that bond. So this is no different than the other boards. We're just going to Danish oil it up. Alright, so I gave these guys some time to dry, 24 hours. And the next step I'm going to be doing, so there's 2 coats of finish on this currently, is that I'm going to use some steel wool and just knock back any of the kind of high bumps that might be on this from the first time. Basically, the next step I'm going to do is I'm going to assemble everything. I'm going to take the tape off so that I will be putting glue on before we do the final screw in. And then I'm going to add minimum 1 more coat of finish just by rubbing with a rag, and maybe not so much letting it get pooling, soaking, and wiping up, but just adding a few more layers of finish when it's actually all assembled. Here we go. All right, 2 more things. So I had this tape here so that the glue can make a bond with the wood. I have my 2 screw holes, and I just like to give these just a little bit of a round over, just so that when we reassemble for the final assembly, it's flat and make a little tighter of a connection rather than have some flakes of wood or what have you in between the 2 pieces making a connection. Yeah! Now on these 2 back pieces here, this is where the connection is going to be made. So I'm just going to sand them down. Final assembly time. I'm just giving a good estimate of where I'm going to be putting the glue. And put some of this wood glue in for tighter bonding right before you screw it in. If there's any squeeze out, you want to catch that now. A little bit of squeeze out. These pocket screws being in the back with a 1-man assembly makes it a lot easier, I'll tell you that. She is all assembled. It is tight. So, like I said, I'm going to put another couple coats of finish, but just with a rag and kind of just rubbing it in, not as pooling as before. And yeah, I'll show you the final product.